How's it going, everyone? We got Sweet Podcast, episode 4. I am Carl Brewer. We got Frankie Whispers in the house, Jeremy Matakin, Steve Mears, and Jason Ackerman. How you guys all doing this weekend?
What up?
Hey, what's up, man?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen?
Man, it has been pretty hot last week. Training on Wednesday was pretty brutal for me. I haven't done no-gi in a while, and just the pace was a little different. Plus, Jason tried to rip my arm off. He didn't want to do the catch and release.
Well, I figured I would sacrifice the 5 seconds of recovery time for the effort exerted to finish the submission. But also, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with where we train at. Bakersfield, California is one of the hottest places you could possibly train at in the world. It was probably, 104, 105 on Wednesday?
Tell the people from Abu Dhabi that.
I know. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I at the same time, coming up from Southern California, I think the hottest weather I ever trained in was like 85 degrees or something like that. And then up here, over summer, on the regular, in that garage.
And Matt likes to not use air conditioning.
Yeah.
He doesn't even like to use fans.
It's like...
Matt's like, this is good for you. This will make you tough.
Technically, it is good for you.
Well,
all these Russian dudes in the sauna,
overhead.
just come to Bakersfield, put on a gi. And
the funny thing is the fans are running, and then you're exhausted, and you're just like trying to cool off, and you're just basically trying to get your temperature down to less than 150 degrees, so you don't have a stroke. And then all of a sudden, Matt goes, "Hey, can you unplug that fan? I need to say something," and the fans are just too loud.
And he's like, Matt's like, okay. Long story short, guys. I gotta say something.
That's after
quick.
like 30 minutes. Too.
I gotta say something really quick. Can you guys please turn off the fans? And you're just like, really? Can we just keep it on, Matt?
Carl breaks out the IV bag and lays flat on the.
I literally, it probably would not be a bad idea to have EMTs on site.
In all seriousness, too, we should bring ice baths for post training recovery.
If we brought ice, it would be melted by the time class was done.
Yeah.
So it was pretty warm. So you guys know it was Frank's week to bring the beer, and apparently he did not disappoint.
He did not disappoint.
Lo and behold, shitty beer.
Yeah. It is terrible.
So Frank, why don't you talk us through why you decided to get Wanted Joaquin Murrieta chili pepper beer with spiced with Fresno chilies? Will you please talk to us about this?
Well, it was the same people that made the General Sherman's beers that you guys usually like, so I thought it'd be something good to dip. I didn't know it was gonna taste like freaking hot sauce used into a beer cerveza thing, but it gives you heartburn like right away. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting brew. It actually I was saying earlier it would probably be pretty good with like some chili or something, some cornbread. But it's definitely going to give you heartburn right away. I remember specifically Jeremy saying last week, "Don't bring any gimmicky beer, Frank. Don't bring the gimmicky beer. You know what we drink. You should have seen." So Frank just took a drink right now when I was looking at him, and you should have seen the face that he made. He's like, I can't even do it. You can't even see it. But it's like it would basically be if someone like kicked you in the balls. He made that face.
Well, you know what? Me and Steven were just trying to figure out what would be best in order to like choke these things down. And we actually figured out the best way to choke this stuff down is we get a whole bottle of sriracha, and after every drink, we just like shoot a bunch of sriracha into our mouth and then just like swish it around. And then like basically our eyes start to roll back into our heads, and our face turns like really red. And then we're able to drink that drink. And then we just repeat the process over and over.
We actually did that, too. He's not being sarcastic. We literally dumped a third of a bottle of sriracha on some wagon wheels. And my mouth was so hot from that, it actually made this nasty fluid substance taste slightly better.
A refreshing change of pace.
Yeah.
We will post pictures to prove it, what we've been going through. So if you hear a lot of hiccups later, it's because of the heartburn, not because of the buzz. That's for sure. So, anyway, good job, Frank. I knew I could count on you. I knew I could count on you to bring me a shitty beer this week.
Way to take it into the end zone, man.
All right, so we want to go into our Facebook questions. Actually, our friend Sean Starkey asked a great question about the Jake Shields, Husmer, Paul Harris match, and just referee accountability. We actually talked a little bit about this. At least we talked about the match. We didn't talk about referee accountability. We had for time constraints, we had to edit a little bit. But let's talk a little bit about that match again, and let's talk about referees.
Well, Mazzagatti, Mozzarella.
Mozzarella.
I think, I can't really chime in too much except for he's a terrible ref and he shouldn't be participating on any level in the sport. The way he broke up that fight was ridiculous, and it's not the first time that it's happened. So, bounce him.
The other issues is and if you watch the fight, you can see it, and if you see Jake's face after the fight, you can see it, and there's ongoing issues with the eye pokes.
Yep.
And maybe Mazzagatti couldn't see it from those angles. I don't know, but something like that going on for that extended period of a time during a fight is an issue. Also, not stopping fast enough and preventing the fighter from being hurt is also an issue. But I lay more of that blame on Paul Harris because he just constantly does that, and the ref can only do so much to literally pull a guy that's way more physically imposing off of another guy. Mazzagatti's trying to do his best, but Paul Harris is going to do what he's going to do once he's got that submission. So,
yeah, I agree. I think last time we talked about this, Paul Harris had not lost his belt yet. So that's actually I think that's a good move on World Series of Fighting. And I said this before, but Jake Shields, he doesn't complain a lot. Like in his fights, he's a real chill guy. He doesn't make excuses either. If he loses, he says, "Hey, I got caught. The guy he caught me tonight. What am I gonna do?" But as far as this fight, he didn't. He was saying, he was yelling to the ref like he's poking my eyes. He keeps gouging my eyes. He kept over and over. I heard him say it at least 4 or 5 times, and literally he was like, "What the heck?" He said, and I'll say it. He said, "What the fuck, ref?" And it was on live TV, he was talking to Mazzagatti, and then finally Mazzagatti's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll talk to him." But, you don't talk to a guy that's been gouging your eyes. Gouging eyes is dirty.
Not only that, but how much of that can he actually understand anyway about Paul Harris? He probably can't speak. He's, speaks broken English, I'm sure.
But, dude, I think I agree with that, but I still think that he's going to understand, hey, don't poke a guy in the eyes. You know what I mean?
He understands it's not legal.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not trying to stand up for Mazzagatti by no means, and I'm there. This is just one guy. There's also, refs make lapse of judgment, type calls all the time. They are human, but we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes on these situations too. You don't know what Bellator is telling these people. You don't know what World Series of Fighting is telling these people. You don't know what UFC is telling these people. They might be saying, "Hey, this is a fight that we want the fighters to fight." You don't know exactly.
Who are these people you're referring to, like the actual refs?
Well, the refs, but you don't behind the scenes, like the people that are actually promoting this situation.
No, the promoters were pissed, dude, and that's why they stripped him of the belt.
Okay, but that's all after the fact. Okay, we do not know what went through, who's saying what to Mazzagatti to make him actually feel like, maybe he feels like he's on.
No,
he's made some mistakes in the past that have been so bad.
The reason I say that, Jeremy, is because the refs don't work for the organization; they work for the athletic commission.
Right.
So it's a completely different entity. I understand what you're saying, where there might be pressure. Maybe it's outside of the organization. There might be pressure sometimes, but if anything, you would have expected Mazzagatti to be more active with calling off. When he was seeing fouls take place because of Paul Harris, because of how blatant he has cheated before and how he's held on to submissions.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I think that if there was anything, it would have been more pressure to do, to even be on guard a little bit more.
Right, and people were also clamoring about Jake Shields punching him afterwards, and in my mind, I feel like
dirty, man. That was dirty.
No, I feel like Jake was kind of justified because if all the stuff that had gone on, and it appears like it did, I don't blame Jake for punching him. Now, I also don't blame him I don't blame the commission or the organization for finding him but at the same time, sometimes you do the wrong thing because it's the right thing. I know that sounds weird, but it's the wrong thing in the eyes of the commission or the wrong thing in the eyes of the athletic athletic commission and the organization, but at the same time, Paul Harris kind of deserved that. And
Yeah, I'm not saying that it wasn't justified. What I'm saying though is that he usually he's so cool, and if he would have not done that, it would have even helped his story out a little bit more.
Right.
But I could tell how frustrated he was, and you know, it's just that I think you're right. It was just that time. He should have got a cleaner punch. You know,
Right,
if he was
it wasn't
going to
even-
do it because he was on his back, he can't really get a lot of power from that. You know, but I
So
think
the punishment, stripping the belt, like, what do you think is a just punishment?
so. They did.
For
So
this guy.
they stripped. They stripped Paul Harris of the fight or of his title, right? And then what's going to happen next is there's probably going to be he's going to have to go see the commission and talk about suspension and what happens. So the commission did not
I
strip the
thought he got
belt.
suspended for a year. Oh, okay.
So the World Series of Fighting took the belt away from
Right.
him, which is separate entity. And then what will happen next is he'll have to go before the commission, and they're reviewing it. So I think they're going to review it and see. And this match, I know Sean, his question was like referee accountability. This match might set a precedence on that because they're going to go and review the tapes. They're going to listen to Jake. They're going to hear how many times Jake brought it up. You can see his eyes. His eyes are thrashed. So we might get to see Mazzagatti gone from the sport, which I think would benefit all the fighters.
or sanctioned, at least some sort of punishment. And the thing is too is I'm kind of curious, and I don't necessarily know the inner workings of how the athletic commission works versus the organizations, but at the same time, I'm wondering if World Series did this stuff in advance to kind of try to minimize the blow coming from the athletic commission towards the fighters, so to speak. Like we're going to punish them, so that you guys don't have to punish them as much necessarily. And I'm just curious. I'm curious why they decided to do that. And as far as Mazzagatti is concerned, I think on the one hand with the Paul Harris stoppage, I don't know how accountable he is for that, but I do think he is accountable for the eye pokes, and that is something that needs to be dealt with. Whether it's penalty as far as suspension from reffing or whatever. I don't know that it needs to be a death sentence, but it definitely needs to be confronted and dealt with.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, refs like at that level, I think I read somewhere that they make about $100 per match that they ref.
They're not doing this for money.
No, I know.
That's
so,
it?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that it wouldn't hurt him like in his financial. It wouldn't hurt him financially. But if that's the move that needs to happen, where he's just not a ref, Cecil Peoples is another one. I've seen Cecil Peoples as a referee and as a judge, just make some of the worst calls ever. So I would be happy if there's a little bit more accountability. We talked about it a little last time that this is my personal opinion, I don't think refs should train in a gym. And the reason is because they might use that affiliation as a bias for certain fighters.
That's a very interesting point, man.
Yeah.
That's
I
a good
actually
point.
feel completely the opposite.
Yeah,
but-
and we, I know Jason and Jeremy we were kind of going back and forth about it a little bit, but for me is that you see it all the time in jiu-jitsu. You see it all the time, like where there's a referee that trained with a cousin of this guy, or he's just some weird affiliation, and there's just that natural bias of a competitor, and they don't excuse themselves from that situation. They should. If they did, that would be different, But I mean, the jiu-jitsu and MMA community is so small that once you start training and you start finding your lineage of where your guy got his black belt, where your coach got his black belt, you start seeing all this lineage, and eventually everyone comes from the same place, So it's hard to. I understand you want to know what the technical aspects of the sport are, but at the same time, you don't want to build a relationship with people that can make you judge a fight or referee a fight differently.
I just think the fighters are going to suffer even more if we were to do that or enact some sort of rule that it said that the refs could not train, because I don't care how much training. I mean, I'm not talking about physical training. I'm not talking about training as a ref you give them. They will not understand the subtleties of what's going on as well as people that train, and that's.
But do the refs need to though? Don't the refs just need to know the rules?
No, I think that
I
it's
think
important
they
that they
need to
know how
know
to.
they need
There's
to-
at least a system of fighting. I mean, especially jiu-jitsu.
Because I think the
otherwise they're
judges.
standing 'em
I
up,
think the judges need to know the nuances of the sport. I think the judges need to know like what's taking place there, but I don't know if the refs do.
How often does a ref stand somebody up because they don't understand jiu-jitsu and they want to see they want this boxing thing, they want to see some action up top, but really that means that they're missing everything.
Isn't that something wrong with the rules though?
Yeah.
Isn't that a problem that's wrong with the rules?
It could be, but right now that's the rule set, and so it's good.
There is no. That's all subjective though at this time, you know. So I think that I agree with what you're saying as far as that we could get early stand-ups because someone doesn't understand. But you're not going to see. I mean, at this point, you're not going to see a ref stand someone up like if a guy has his back, you know what I mean, or he's attacking in a really good position.
I thought I just saw that a couple weeks ago, but I mean,
when somebody's actually just on top, when somebody's just actually on top of somebody, and it doesn't look like they're trying to aggressively pass a guard, I think a ref is at this point is basically knows what that means and how to identify it, and then that's when they're going to stand them up.
Sitting in someone's guard and like not throwing elbows or anything, but you're not going to see.
And not only that, but like a guy on bottom just holding on for dear life, and just holding on for dear life, trying to keep them close, trying to keep their neck back. You know,
like Conor
close.
McGregor in that last fight.
Hey man, that's you got to stand them up at that point. I mean, because all they're going to do is stall out and just try to
You're talking Conor and Chad Mendez.
Yeah, but if you have to stand them up, and exactly in that fight, if you have to stand them up, they didn't stand him up. He didn't stand him up, and he got out. But if the rule is, or like he said, Jeremy's saying, well, they should stand him up,
and that fight would happen way differently.
It would have totally went down differently.
If it went on again, it would happen way differently.
The ref is going to identify that, though. That's what we're trying to figure out.
We're touching Carl's.
We're just trying to get him to identify that.
But the rules is a whole separate argument. We're not talking about the rules. We're talking about, whether the refs should train or not. We're also talking about referee accountability and refs understanding what's going on. They're given the rule set, and
I don't think you have to train though to know what's going on. I've never boxed. I've never trained exclusively at a pure boxing gym, but I have a good understanding.
But you're not going to ref.
Yeah, but I'm not a ref, but I feel like I could be. I feel like I could do a pretty good job. And a lot of the refs that are in boxing have never fought either.
But
I feel like I could. Some of them have, but not all of them. It's not a requirement. If it was, then we would.
Isn't Big John McCarthy a black belt?
I don't believe that.
I mean, like his opinion is that you should, that to be a good ref, you should.
Big John McCarthy has a business where he trains referees. I mean, of course,
But part of his belief system is that. Yeah, it's really important that you understand what's happening.
I think it's just a reach to think that so many people are so connected to so many other people in the jiu-jitsu or MMA world that they're just going to favor so many people. I've seen it. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened.
I've seen that in jiu-jitsu tournaments, especially in jiu-jitsu, it happens because it's such a small community. For us, we think jiu-jitsu is huge. But that's because we follow jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? I talk to 10 people outside at work. No one knows what the hell jiu-jitsu is. No one knows who Buchecha is. No one knows who anyone is. You know what I mean? These are the best guys in the world. No one knows who any of them are.
Right, and you're making my point for me. That this is something that exists in the jiu-jitsu community, yes, but it does not exist in the MMA community. Because the MMA community brings all these other different practices and all these other different people. MMA is a multi-million-dollar sport. It's got Reebok as sponsors. It's
billions at this point.
Probably billions. I misspoke. But the point is this: is that
I'm making your point. I'm helping your point.
You are is because it draws a much bigger crowd, and the community is not small anymore. And so at least not in MMA. Now, yes, in jiu-jitsu and IBJJF, even you might be able to make that argument to an extent. But I feel like the tournaments that I've seen lately, even those are pretty well. They're pretty fair, even coming from refs that are from the same schools as the guys you might be going against. I'm not saying it always happens.
I mean, I thought Zhao versus Malfacini, or I thought that was a ref decision, and I thought Zhao should have taken that match. I don't know the ref, and I don't know the tie, but I don't know. Right,
but that's the point too, is that not knowing. Who knows where the ref is from? I would like to now look into that just to kind of do a little research,
let's look into that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I don't know. I think it's important that the refs have an understanding of what the fighters are going through while they're going through it so that they don't step in too soon or too late either, like in Paul Harris and Shields. And, I'm not saying that would have changed that outcome necessarily, but I'm using that as an example.
I think you could be educated enough to understand about the sport without necessarily having to train. That's all. That's my point, and I think if you were to train and do the ethical thing, if you had trained with someone, another fighter, and you said, you know what, I've trained with this guy before, I can't ref his fight, I would have no problem with that, right? But at this point, I doubt that happens. So that's my problem. If you've trained with someone and you're reffing their fight, that's kind of weird to me.
Okay, but look at the refs that we see for the most part. We see Big John McCarthy, Herb Dean.
They train though.
Right, but who do they train with that's that good in the UFC?
I don't know. I mean, Herb Dean has fought a few pro fights.
But who does he train with?
I'm not sure. You know,
I know where he trains. I know where he used to train. I don't know if he still trains.
I know John McCarthy has trained with professionals that he's probably ref before.
That have come and gone through his gym, but just because you train with them once or twice doesn't mean, and when you train with everybody and you don't care because you're just training with everybody, it doesn't make a difference, then how does that really have a bearing on their judgment while they're in there?
I mean, Big John is a good ref too.
Right. So he's a bad example to use for this, I guess. But
no, but I mean, he's a good example for you.
Yeah, he's
a bad example for me.
Right.
He trains. He's a black belt.
But I mean, I guess there's for me, it just brings up a question, right? If there is a close fight, if there's a close fight and you get a questionable call and then you find out, oh, this person did train with someone, it's just going to bring up, it could just be a black mark on the sport, like a negative mark. So,
okay. So if we like kind of shift a little bit, what about the Paul Harris thing? Okay. So he is a black mark on the sport, fighting that way. So new people that are trying to get involved in it or want to watch the sport, they're going to be like, look, this is totally barbaric. He's completely uncontrolled, undisciplined, and doesn't represent what we would hope would be represented in the sport. So apart from the ref getting bounced from the sport, what do you think the punishment should be on him?
For Paul Harris?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say that he should at least a 1 or 2 year suspension, right? I think it should be pretty heavy at this point because this isn't the first time. And it's not just in MMA. He's done this in jiu-jitsu. It was against David Avalon.
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, in the Abu Dhabi, like where they reset him in a heel hook and he cranked it and like, he tore like ACL. It's just like.
And the guy was tapping?
Yeah, he was ready. He was ready to tap because the reset was so deep. He was already like this, and then the ref said go, and he immediately tapped, and Paul Harris.
Okay.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it should be severe. And
was there any punishment in that situation?
No, of course not. Yeah, that's not regulated by anyone. It's literally the promoters are the refs at that point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The promoter hires the referees at that point. That's another problem I would say with jiu-jitsu is like there's no oversight,
Mm-hmm.
with jiu-jitsu. So there's no separate entity where there's a commission kind of watching everything.
This is a whole separate topic. I don't know that jiu-jitsu wants a governing body outside of the promoters at this point.
Isn't that what the global?
Well, yeah,
thing
the World League. That's one of the things they actually advertise is that these people they're basically unbiased.
But they're all still one organism.
They all train
one promoter.
somewhere.
Yeah, so that's a whole separate.
It's
argument.
really got to be and to Jason's point, maybe jiu-jitsu is not ready for that, but at the same time, like people keep talking about jiu-jitsu in the Olympics or whatever, right? This has to happen in order for that to, you cannot have a profitable organization like throwing events like IBJJF, and they hire their own referees and everything. That is not the same as like the Jiu-Jitsu Federation.
But what about with wrestling?
I mean,
judo?
I'm sorry, the Judo Federation. But
they hire local refs.
But they're a non-profit organization, though.
Right, but I believe they hire local refs for their tournaments, and what they do is they just go to all the schools and say, okay, now you're representing this organization and you can be a ref. But they still train in the same places. They still come from the same places.
But there's no financial benefit for them. How matches happen or anything.
Well, right, but there isn't for people in IBJJF either.
I would disagree with that.
How is that? This is a whole separate argument we're getting on right now. But I wanted to go back to the Paul Harris bit real quick. I think the year suspension is right. I don't know about 2, maybe 2, but year I'm definitely comfortable with. He's demonstrated that he does this a lot. not just in Carl said in Abu Dhabi he did it, and other MMA fights he's done it. He was basically excused from UFC for it, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it's just the guy's a problem with, as far as this goes.
I don't think he understands what's going on.
I don't
No, I
either.
think he's a fucking nut.
I don't think he
either.
understands.
Yeah.
I think he's nuts, dude.
Yeah.
Because he does it to his training partners. That,
The people you really,
Really?
worst. That's the worst people you should do it to.
Yeah, and that his coach is just like, I think he gets a little aggressive, and he goes back to those like favela days, like where he comes from a real poor background, right? But at some point, like how many people come from a real poor background though, that are Brazilians in the UFC that don't do that? You know what I mean?
And here's an interesting topic just to bring up too. Now, people are really upset about all the creating the submissions and stuff like that. What about when people keep hitting knocked out fighters?
Yeah, it's
And there's no repercussions for that because that's what's expected is you keep going till the ref stops the fight. But when a guy's clearly out and guys continue to bomb on him while they're out, how is that any different?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it's just a question to kind of throw out there. But
it's a good point, but I think that the problem with Paul Harris is that the ref was stopping him, and he kept
I agree
going.
with you. Yeah.
So that's the main difference. You don't usually see someone like, unless we're talking like a while ago here, but like what, Mike Pyle, right? Mike Kyle.
Well, that was he stomped on that guy.
And he like kept,
Yeah.
but he kept doing it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I can't think of any time in the recently that a ref has tried to stop someone and they keep going. So, but I do agree that ethically, and you saw Machida, right? Machida did that. Like he kicked Mark
Lowe's on
Munoz.
too.
Machida kicked Mark Munoz in the head,
Right.
dropped him, and then went over him. He was clearly knocked out. Waited for the ref. He didn't throw another strike, which was, Joe Lozon stopped his own fight. He's like, he just got up.
And that's good for the sport. So
I think it's good. Yeah.
those are the people we want to prop up, and
Yeah.
we want to say, hey, this is the
Dan
professional level.
Dan Henderson, though, on the other side of that, right when he fought Michael Bisping, he threw in like Michael Bisping was clearly out, and he threw in that extra. Boom.
He was asleep before he hit the ground, and he was and you know what? Also to restore the faith in humanity for the newer fans, it's like Steven was talking about. You got guys like Damian Maia, who submitted Magny rear naked choke, and there was such limited damage taken from that fight that Magny went around and fought like 3 or 4 weeks later.
Yeah, he's actually fighting
Powerful jiu-jitsu.
Tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
There's his opponent walked away with no injuries to the point where he's ready to fight a couple weeks later, and that's kind of cool too. I mean, that
That's
makes you
awesome.
Yeah,
Vitor Belfort, I don't know if you guys remember this. Jeremy at one point bought all of the UFCs, and he went back and started like watching all of them to try to get kind of up to speed, I guess, with some of the comments that I'd be making. And Vitor Belfort, he did an entire match because someone was questioning his jiu-jitsu. Vitor went an entire match without throwing one strike at all, and he subbed a guy by armbar, which is kind of cool too. This is like a long time ago, but yeah, it was it is cool to see that side of it.
Yeah,
too,
and then they chanted afterwards. They were just chanting jujitsu the whole time.
Yeah.
All they were doing is going jujitsu,
Yep.
jujitsu.
and that was super cool though. We got to move on though. You guys continue the discussion on Facebook for sure. Let us know what you guys think about referee accountability, how to kind of clean up the sport with dirty fighters. Yeah, for sure.
Hey, let me say one more thing. My stance on this is basically referees. I think that they somehow we need to figure out how to get regulated. These organizations are making enough money now where they can actually start hiring and start paying these guys more than $100 a freaking whatever it is. They're not really getting paid. Let's regulate this thing. Let's start getting it like the NFL. Let's start getting it like the Major League Baseball. Let's try to start getting this stuff where the referees are actually way more accountable instead of just showing up in their car and saying, hey, by the way, here's what you're doing. Okay, and then let me just make one more point. I used to do a lot of freestyle wrestling back when I was in high school. I used to, just wake up on the Saturdays and go to tournaments and stuff. And to this day, and this actually just reminded me of this certain situation. I was actually in the finals on I think I was like a senior in high school, and I was going against this guy that we had tussled a few times, once or twice, and he was tough. And I knew that I had an opportunity to beat him, but I don't know if you know in freestyle, points fly, and some of them are subjective. And lo and behold, the actual referee of this match happened to be his high school coach.
Yeah, so that's
and
bullshit.
so, but here's the thing: as I go, okay, I can still beat this guy. I can beat this guy hands down. Well, when you're basically neck and neck with a lot of these people, especially some, first place is not, it's not exactly just like a hands down, you're going to win. And it's already in my head. It's already in your head that, hey, this guy trains with this guy.
Yep.
Okay, and then turns out, sure as hell, some of the points were subjective, and the whole time after I had actually lost the match by points, obviously. I started talking to the ref. I'm like, hey, you guys train together. Aren't you his coach? And he kind of downplayed it a little bit, and he was telling me how good of a wrestler I was. But at that point, I was basically pissed off at the very beginning, and at the very end, when I only lost by a few points, I was actually even more pissed.
So and that's actually kind of bringing in the point that we were talking about referees training with certain people or coaching for sure would be ridiculous. I know Matt refs a lot of matches, and he always excuses himself. He will never ref someone from our gym, which is the ethical thing to do. Speaking of Matt, Matt just won a super fight at the Gracie Worlds. So
Matt Baker?
Yeah, Matt Baker, our jiu-jitsu coach, just won a super fight at the Gracie World. So congratulations,
Which
Matt.
means he had to actually sub him, so it just puts great faith back in the jiu-jitsu sport, because not only can you win by points, but our coach is an absolute boss.
What's cool about Matt is that he will teach us. He teaches us game plans based off of the tournament we are competing in. If you think we're doing an IBJJF tournament where he knows that there's going to be a lot of tough competitors, he'll teach you the nuances of points and even advantages. He'll go to that level. Like, hey, people win off an advantage. Which is awesome. It was cool to see him go in a sub-only match on short notice and get the victory. Steven actually was able to see the ending of the match, which was awesome. So can you tell us what you saw, Steve?
The little bit that I saw was just, from what I could see, looked like he was dominating at every point in the match. I mean, there's a picture floating around Facebook with him and having the guy, I don't know the guy's name, but has him in side control. And I'm not speaking loud enough. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. But the little bit that I saw, it was Matt totally dominating, and then at ultimately taking the guy's back, which is his specialty, and subbing him with what looked like a cross collar choke. So
yeah, once Matt gets your back, it's pretty difficult. I've seen a few super fights where Matt, he gets the guy's back, and it's really hard to escape Matt's back control, and he has really good double collar choke and a bow and arrow from there.
And he has a great DVD called 30 Ways to Attack the Back, so he should be exceptional at doing it.
What are the other DVDs called that Matt has out? I know he has like the Sitting Guard, right?
So he has the Jiu-Jitsu Lab DVD series. I think it's Sitting Guard 1 and 2, and then 30 Ways to Attack the Back, and I think that has some bonus material.
Yeah.
He also has an
iTunes app.
An iTunes app for all the Sitting Guard stuff.
I think, is that for the Sitting Guard stuff, or is that the Lab? Or is it both?
Oh, no, it's just for the Sitting Guard right now.
Awesome. So if you guys want to check out some of our instructionals, definitely hit up iTunes and check out Matt Baker.
Download that app, and it will make your game go through the roof. That Sitting Guard game is off the hook.
Sitting Guard, it's funny because Jason comes from a different school, right? He came to our gym as a brown belt, already like legit, had a super dope clothes guard and everything.
Where's he from?
He is from Crone Gracie, so he was a brown belt from Crohn's. And when his sitting guard was actually very similar to the sitting guard that we play. A lot of people, play the butterfly guard, right? But he uses the knee, very similar to the way Matt does. So super dope. Sitting guards, awesome. I'm glad Matt's incorporating that into some of the instructional lately in class and everything. So super awesome. Congrats, Matt.
Yeah, congrats, man.
Yeah, it was definitely when I came up here and started training with all the guys at Bakersfield BJJ, they definitely had as far as the sitting guard goes, a similar game to what I was used to. Obviously, there are like any school you go to, there's different details, there's different things that people focus on. But Matt's take on it is definitely very effective, and I can't say enough good things about Matt as a coach, and as far as the sitting guard and his deep half and all that stuff. Definitely changed my perspective on things as far as some positions go.
Yeah, I love the sitting guard. I'm sweeping big guys like Carl.
What are you trying to say, man?
It helped my game a lot. I mean, I grew my game off that. So it's a wonderful way to play, I think. And I still keep on bringing it in every once in a while when I can.
Definitely, Frank. You guys don't hear Frank a lot, but we're trying to get him in the conversation a little more. But he uses his what we call it's like a half butterfly guard. Really, we call it something a little differently, but he uses that very effectively to try to get you off. Away from him to create a little bit of space so he can move, because Frank's a smaller guy compared to almost everyone else on this podcast. So he's a smaller one, but damn, he's got some sneaky chokes.
But he will choke you.
Yeah, he will choke you.
He will quietly choke you.
Frank will choke you. Okay, you pass his guard and he'll choke you.
Is Frankie Whispers gonna have to choke a bitch?
Frankie Whispers, I'm gonna choke you from what? What, you inside control? You think you're safe? I'm going to choke you. Yeah. He does like loop chokes from basically every position. You feel safe. You're like, nothing can happen to me right now. Bullshit. He will choke you. So if you guys ever get the opportunity to roll with Frankie Whispers, when you pass his guard, if you pass his guard, don't think you're safe. So we wanted to also talk about, there's some pretty big news, right? Dana White announced after Miesha Tate had fought that she was going to be fighting for the title. That was what everyone was expecting. And just yesterday, that changed. Yesterday morning, that changed, right? Was it yesterday or Thursday?
I believe it was yesterday or Thursday, but do we know why that?
Yeah, there hasn't been an official.
Aside from the fact that nobody wants to see Tate 3?
And we did talk about this last time, that I was really not interested in seeing Miesha Tate 3. But at the same time, Amanda Nunes is on a tear right now. Holly Holmes kind of discussed how she wanted another fight before the title shot. So this is kind of a big surprise to a lot of people. And I don't know if you guys are on Twitter, but on Twitter there is a lot of buzz about, okay, are they doing this because Miesha Tate is going to be fighting Cyborg? So they're talking
that would be awesome.
They're talking about Holly Holm, Ronda Rousey in the headliner, right? Zhigzhenskov versus Claudia Gadelha. What's the last name?
Gadelha, I think.
What's the last name, Jason?
I believe it's Gadelha.
Gadelha.
Yeah.
So the Brazilian 115-pounder. So they're going to be fighting on the co-main event. And there's some discussion going on Twitter that Miesha Tate and Cyborg might be going at either 135 or 140.
These are the kind of things that they might have to do to salvage these Ronda pay-per-views. I mean, it's really cool. It's historic for women's MMA, but in terms of like seeing a really good fight, there's really nobody that you can.
I think the matchmakers are basically
at this point.
I think the matchmakers are just looking at this saying, "Hey, they're basically taking like a survey of some sort. And they're saying how many people really want to see right now a Holly Holm or a fight between Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey again. No one wants to see a third fight. Basically the second one went worse than the first one. So what do you think this next one's going to be? I mean, everybody's thinking like Holm.
So I think Miesha did a lot better.
Way better, yeah.
In the second fight.
In the second fight?
Yeah.
She
She went to the third round.
went to the fifth round with her.
No, she went to the third round with her in the second fight, and then the first fight she got subbed pretty quick in the first round.
I think. Well, sorry. Go ahead.
No, but
see it then.
but
I thought it was the other way around.
it actually she's progressively gotten better in each fight, but at the same time it's like they've already fought twice. And
Well, is this I mean, that stuff's all. We can make it all about Tate and this Tate 3 and how that didn't happen, but apart from that, is it fair, do you think, to Holly Holm, who's just getting started? I mean, how long has she been training jiu-jitsu?
Well, but here's the thing too. Fair is not a matter of the issue at hand. If they offered to fight and she agreed to it,
She's ranked 15.
right?
She didn't have to accept the
Right.
fight, though, like Jason is saying.
And the other thing too is I think what they're doing with this
Maybe.
fight is that this fight is interesting because you have somebody who is a very high level striker getting in there with Ronda, and I actually am interested to see this fight for this reason. I still think Ronda will win. However, Ronda's been on a tear with her striking lately. Mm-hmm. I don't think she'll be on a tear with her striking with Holm. Mm-hmm. I think Holm will be able to do much better standing than the previous girls that she's fought. Now, where I think Ronda will still emerge the victor is once Ronda gets it to the ground and is able to submit her. But I'm interested to see what happens because let's see what happens when Holm controls the range a little bit better as far as striking is concerned and how that plays out and how Ronda reacts to that. I still think Ronda's probably going to eventually get the clinch, get a throw, and get an armbar or something along those lines. I'm just curious to see someone who's physically as close as you're going to get to Ronda, because you had McMahon, who was a really good wrestler, but that's a grappler versus a grappler, and Ronda definitely picked up the striking a lot better than McMahon did. So that kind of makes it, Ronda just tears her up on the feet. Whereas Holm comes from a striking background, has tore up some girls, albeit not in the UFC, but her UFC performances have kind of been not overly impressive. She's definitely won and definitely been in control of the fight, but she just hasn't really done crazy amounts of damage or knocked people out or like she did before the UFC. But I'm interested to see how that plays out with Ronda as far as Holm probably being able to control the distance as far as on the feet with striking and stuff like that.
Yeah, I see Ronda just winning this one hands down. I don't see Holmes really giving her that much problem. So really, just Ronda, just with her striking, like you guys said, she's just been on it. I'm surprised nobody's really even tried to even practice. It doesn't look like they even try to practice at their boxing or their armbar defense. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I agree. I do think though that Holly Holmes might be the first female that will have the size advantage on Ronda. Holly Holmes she's a big woman,
How big is she? I mean, is she tall?
Yeah, she's tall and she's physically big. She makes the weight, obviously.
She's big for the division, yeah.
But like she made Marion Reneau look pretty small. Her legs are pretty thick, And I think that it's going to be interesting because Holly Holmes has a good she can control the range really well. And that's what's going to make it interesting. If Ronda cannot get in close to get a clinch and get a throw and get a takedown, it could be very interesting. Because she almost Holly Holm almost reminds me of like Lyoto Machida, the way she fights, right? She stays out of danger, which some people are saying, oh, since she's been to UFC, she's been a little boring, but she hasn't lost a round. She hasn't lost a minute of a round. You know what I mean? There's been no times that she's been in danger. Mo was able to get close enough to pull guard on her, right? But I don't think I don't know. Well, it's interesting. I would much rather see this fight than Miesha Tate 3 at this point.
Do you think that? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, do you think that this somehow, this kind of makes the rankings for the women's division a waste of time? I mean,
it's always been that way, though. You always see people
15 to the number one. I mean, Miesha had to fight her way back up to that position, right? I mean, so
I don't. Is she ranked on the UFC as number 15? I don't think so.
Who?
Holly Holm. I don't think she was. I don't know if she is. I'll check it right now, but I think I don't know. What I think is that this is a more interesting fight to me, but at the same time, I think Amanda Nunes would have been a more interesting fight as well. So it's not like this is the only fight that could have happened. So right now it looks like Holly Holm is ranked number 9.
Number 9, yeah.
okay.
in the UFC. And here's the thing: is like Alexis Davis already lost to Ronda Rousey.
They've all lost except for Nunez.
Yeah, Nunez is the only one that's ranked above, and Jessica Ai.
Yeah.
But Jessica Ai just lost to Miesha Tate.
Arguably, Holly has already lost.
Well, no, because here's the thing, though. Is Holly hasn't fought any of the fighters from 8 to 1.
Yeah.
So that also could be where they're going with this. Is they're going with a new fighter that haven't ruined the quote-unquote unknown factor, because this person hasn't lost to anybody between number 1 contender and number 8 contender.
Yeah, she really hasn't.
So it's kind of an unknown territory, which makes it, I guess, a little more interesting. But
and also Holly Holm hasn't been in any danger in any of her fights. You know what I mean? Like outside the UFC and inside the UFC. What was interesting to me was Holly Holm. There was like an interview I was reading earlier, and it said that she doesn't care why she was picked. She's gonna make the best of the opportunity. To me, that's a loser's mindset. You're gonna make the best of it.
She says that about everything, though.
No, but I'm just saying though, that's not a. If someone were, if you're a fighter and someone tells you, hey, you're fighting for the title, you'd be like, I'm gonna win that title.
Yeah, but
you don't say I'm gonna make the best of it.
She always makes modest comments like that, though. She always has.
Well, it also could come from she didn't have to fight to get there. I mean, they're just Misha's going into that thing saying, I think I've got what it takes this time. I mean, I've been working hard. A couple interviews back, she said, I'm not ready yet, but pretty soon I really feel like I'll be ready. And now she's saying that she's ready. And this girl's going, oh, well, I've only had a couple fights in the UFC. I'm still trying to get some momentum.
Miesha Tate is the Joseph Benavidez of the flyweight division, though. And Joseph Benavidez will beat any other flyweight in the world, but he's already beat Demetrius Johnson, or he's already lost to Demetrius Johnson twice. Mm-hmm. Who wants to see it again? I would, because I'm a Team Alpha Male fan. I'm a Joseph Benavidez fan. But at the same time, I don't think everyone else wants to see Joseph Benavidez keep fighting the champion and cleaning out the division. That's why you're seeing like it almost puts a promoter in a tough spot, because if they say, oh, this person has to get through Miesha to fight for the title, Miesha might win and be a spoiler and just keep fighting for the title, and that's kind of, viewers don't really want to see that.
So, I mean, what we're seeing is Ronda is literally holding up the women's division, by herself. I mean, there's nobody really else that they're going to schedule to say, okay, this is enough for this division. Like Miesha carrying something, or a couple women's fights.
Well, I mean, last week
that people care about. I'm saying. I
mean, I was interested in the Miesha Tate Nunez fight. I really was, and that was a good fight. Miesha Tate looked really strong, looked really good. Her hands looked really good, so she's obviously made some improvements. I just don't know if it's enough at this point to really challenge Ronda.
Well, so let's talk about Miesha Cyborg, because we're kind of, everybody's hinting at that, or at least the internet is hinting at that happening. How do you think she does with Cyborg?
Man, I think Cyborg's a tough fight for any 135-pound lady. Like there was a picture released a couple weeks ago with her standing next to Frankie Edgar, right? Who was like the former 155-pound champion. And she was massive compared to Frankie Edgar.
He looked like Frodo Baggins.
No, literally, she was just so much bigger than him. And it's not that she's just big, I mean, she's already tested positive for steroids, right? So it's not saying that she could be using is not. It's not speculation. It's a possibility at this point.
She's demonstrated it through prior behavior.
Exactly, and so not only is she so much bigger, but she's technical too. She will. The only thing is because she's so aggressive. I've seen her gas out in Muay Thai fights. I've seen her gas out and get a little tired and sloppy because she's so aggressive and comes out so aggressive. So I don't know. That's interesting, but I think that would be, if they did it that way, it would set up a super fight, right? This mega fight. If Cyborg comes in and just beats up Miesha Tate, but Miesha Tate could be a spoiler, though, right? She could be a spoiler,
right,
and catch Cyborg, Because
And then
Misha
that
Tate's
just-
tough, man. Misha Tate is tough. Remember when her arm was like backwards? You guys remember that? Like,
Stubborn.
like she didn't tap, dude. Like, like Ronda Rousey was like pushing her hand like to the back of her head. Like that's how deep that. Like the armbar, like her arm was already dislocated. And she still wasn't tapping. So she's tough, dude. Like, I think if Cyborg wins that fight, it's gonna be very brutal. It's gonna be very tough to watch.
I'm trying to pull up something from Cyborg's Instagram right now, where I recall in her most recent fight, she weighed in, and either that night or the next day, so she made 145,
And she was 180,
175.
a 175.
That's 30-pound difference, though.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And yeah, to make 135, like, that's a 40-pound difference, So she would have to
It's
make.
so tough for her to even make 145. She's freaking killing herself
She's
just to
huge,
make
man.
145.
And yeah, I know what Jason's talking about. She's huge. But like she's not fat though. You know what I mean? There's not like all this water that you could lose. So we also wanted to talk about last week. We talked about the Eddie Bravo Invitational matches, and we talked about the format, the tournament. Earlier before we started recording, we were talking about kind of how it's pretty interesting and exciting. The Eddie Bravo Invitational, but is some of that due to some of the mismatches? It's not uncommon so far to see a black belt competing against a blue belt in the EBI. Is that good for the sport? It's definitely good for the excitement level, right? It's definitely more exciting to see some subs, but is that really an accurate representation of the top athletes? I will say, before we get started, I want to say that the EBI 4 did have a much more level playing field, but we've seen purple belts going against black belts. We've seen blue belts going against black belts. Was that the right approach? And was it done intentionally to make EBI a little more exciting? What do you guys think?
I think that's a good question to submit to the listeners to chime in on Facebook. What do you really think about this? Just answer the question. Do you think it's good for the sport? It does. It's getting it out there, but what are your opinions? Well, I don't know what your guys' opinions are.
Something I wanted to say too is I don't know that Eddie purposely did that to make it more entertaining. Maybe he did, but also maybe it was also a matter of just those were the competitors that were available, and the other guys just weren't for whatever reasons. Maybe they were getting ready for other things. And EBI is gaining, it's gaining fame, it's gaining more viewers, it's gaining respect, I think, as it continues to progress. And I think it's something that's making jiu-jitsu head in the right direction as far as paying the competitors. However, you definitely still have crowds of people that won't necessarily compete in anything unless it's an IBJJF tournament or an Abu Dhabi tournament, maybe at Matt Moore's tournament. But for the most part, you have a lot of the elite level guys, and some of them might be getting ready for something else, and they don't want to take away from their prep for what they're getting ready for EBI. And I understand that EBI offers money, but to them, they might win more money in other tournaments, or they also might win more quote-unquote notoriety by winning certain tournaments. So, my opinion is that might change as time goes on and more people do EBI and it becomes a deeper talent pool. So I'm not sure why there was, and credit to the guys that stepped up. That takes a lot of sand to go out there against some of these high level black belts, as a blue or purple or a brown belt or whatever.
Right.
That's awesome that they did that.
And we've seen brown belts be black belts,
Right.
in Metamoris and EBI, but like I think it is a little. There's a huge difference between a blue belt and a black belt.
For sure.
And the difference between a brown belt and a black belt is obviously going to be a lot less. But was the promotion doing that to generate some excitement and a lot of action, which they would have seen, a lot of finishes? Or was it something that they really thought the blue belt could have won the EBI? And what does that mean? What if a blue belt would have won the EBI?
Well, who's the blue belt though? I mean, now I'm just to make this more interesting. What belt was what belt was John Jones when he put Vitor Belfort to sleep? He was a white belt. I mean, it was MMA, granted, but in a different format. And then even, what about like Chris Weidman when he went against Galvao and gave him like a 12-minute or 14-minute match? You know what I mean? Or, you know,
Chris Weidman's dope though.
But he's dope. But if he's a blue belt, he's still a blue belt. You know what I mean? But saying he's a blue belt doesn't really paint the whole picture. He's a phenomenal college level wrestler.
I mean, the guys that were invited were like
Normal, not normal.
No,
but
but like they're like, so I know one of the guys I had seen him compete as a blue belt for a long time, and he's very good. He's a very good blue belt, but at the same time, he's a blue belt. You know what I mean? He's competing against blue belts. So when you watch him compete, you're seeing him competing against people that are at his level. You know,
right?
And that's not the same that could be said against, like, dude, I don't care like how it goes down in the gym. If a blue belt catches a purple belt, a brown belt, or a black belt, whatever, any of that could happen, and it does happen. But that does not make them a black belt, and that does not, in a competition level, like where things are serious and there's $5,000 on the line for every match. It's just, I don't know. When Steve brought it up, it's like, hey, why do you think that was happening? It really, it made me think about it. It's like, okay, was it just to create some buzz and like the excitement factor?
And it might have been, but I also think it may also have been just availability of competitors. I mean, and I don't know, that's a whole other issue too with Matt Morris trying to swoop some of their competitors and other things going on too. But I don't know, the validity of that. But kudos to those guys for stepping up, and also it definitely made it more entertaining. However, does that mean that it was more competitive?
No.
I don't know.
Well, obviously, yeah, obviously not. But like, this last EBI, there was a few brown belts, but it was mostly browns and blacks, competing. And you saw that with the amount of matches that went to decision compared to EBI 3, EBI 2, EBI 1.
Well, let me just throw this out there too. Jared Dopp, who is competing in Abu Dhabi this year, was it last year in 2013, I think? He defeated Magalhaes in their division and outed Magalhaes before he made it to the finals as a purple belt. And I don't even know how long he was a purple belt either. I mean, Jared Dopp's a phenomenal competitor. If you follow him at all, he wins a lot of tournaments in the gi and without the gi. But he beat Vinny Magalhaes, and I think the second round. And then he might have lost in the round after that. I don't think he medaled, but sometimes things happen that you don't expect to happen.
What competition was that?
This was Abu Dhabi, 2013, and it was a big deal because
I thought Magalhaes went with Verdum in the last.
I think that was 2011.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just throwing that out there that sometimes
Abu Dhabi, he didn't get invited though. You know what I mean?
Dopp or.
Well, I'm sure as a purple belt, he did not get invited. He probably won a regional event.
He might have. I don't recall how he made it last year. He got invited this year, but
but you know what I mean? Like in the EBI where it's an invitation,
right?
And like they don't earn their spot, like because there are sick purple belts that could, specifically in no-gi events that could do a lot better than they do with a gi. Maybe that's just what they focus on. Maybe they don't worry about the belts. There's a lot of no-gi guys that don't worry about the belts at all. But Steve really brought up the question of like, do we think this was intentional to create a buzz? What do you think, Steve? What do you think, based off of just such a wide gap in skill set, was it intentional or not?
Man, I can't. Well, obviously, I can't say categorically if it was or it wasn't. I would hope that it wasn't. I would hope for the sake of the tournament and for the future of the tournament that it wasn't. But whether it was or wasn't, I think that it's actually, on a certain level, I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I'm a blue belt, and I think that it's every time. Like today, I rolled with Jason, and there wasn't a moment when I stepped over to that opportunity where I thought, man, I'm really going to do good right now. I just thought, here we go, So for the younger guys that are coming in and that are new to the game, I think that it's cool for them. They get an opportunity to say, well, I got nothing to lose here, so I can kind of throw in and roll the dice. Maybe I do well.
I see that point of it, but at the same time, it's like
That was me kind of skirting it.
but what is it? What does it say though? Like
I think let me.
As a black belt, you should chime in.
Well, this is what I was going to say too, and I just thought about this. What if the reason that Eddie wants to do this also is because he does want to have a totally differing levels of experience, but the reason is because now you're allowing for a Cinderella story, so to speak, too. Now, is a Cinderella story going to happen? Probably not, but if it does, doesn't it make it that much more awesome too?
Yeah,
well, that's a good point because
and
Eddie was a brown belt,
right?
When he beat a Hoyler.
Oh, that's a real good point.
That's a good. I didn't think about that, Jason. So, if you guys don't know, kind of what put Eddie on the map really was his match against Hoyler Gracie. What was that, the 90?
It was like 2004.
2001?
2001? I thought it was like
2003.
99.
2003.
2003. So 2003 ADCC.
He was a brown belt.
And Hoyler Gracie at the time, man, no one would have guessed the outcome of it, Hoyler Gracie was like the hands down favorite to win the entire event. And Eddie subbed him with a triangle choke, right?
Yeah.
But he was a brown belt at the time. So maybe that is what. Maybe Eddie is thinking, okay, ADCC does it. They have a lot of different skill sets and a lot of different ranges. So maybe that's true. What do you think? What do you think, Jeremy?
That's a good point. Maybe Eddie's just trying to put as many type of grapplers on the map that he can right now. I mean, just everybody's getting the same type of notoriety. Why not put some guys that people don't really know too much about? And then when it turns out that, hey, this guy actually is pretty damn good, even if they don't win the entire event, if they just make a good showing, the next thing you know, not only is that person on the map, but wherever he trains is also on the map.
I think Uncle Eddie's got a sweet spot for Cinderella stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I think this kind of goes back to what we used to discuss a long time ago about GSP having his black belt, which he missed arm bars in UFC, and I don't even know how he even got his black belt missing like basic arm bars and basic submissions that you learn like higher blue, lower purples, maybe. I mean, how can we measure that when you start doing like no gi when a belt system is only for basically like a gi person?
That's true. Just goes advanced.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that goes, that we can go on forever about the belt system under a no gi system. I think.
What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
I think 10th Planet is only system, right?
Right.
I think they tried to start belting MMA, which is
It's stupid. I don't think there needs to be any belt system for a no-gi. I just don't. And that's not to say that. I don't know. I just don't see the point. You throw out a stud wrestler who's a white belt who can just mop the floor with a lot of guys. Mm-hmm. Or you throw out. I don't see the necessity for it. Have professional divisions, have mediocre divisions, intermediate divisions, whatever you want. Mediocre is probably not the right.
Well, I think
intermediate this weekend's mediocre division.
Well, I think the belt system really plays into the ego of jiu-jitsu and grappling, which is something we really haven't talked about yet. And I do want to have a more in-depth conversation about that. But I think, a black belt in anything validates your accomplishments and validates your skill set, right? You can't go to someone and say, "Oh, I'm an expert grappler." They won't care. Mm-hmm. But if you say I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, maybe they still don't care, but at least they're like, "Dude, this guy's a black belt in something."
But who says you can't be both? I'm not saying you can't be both. I'm not saying you can't be a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu and a phenomenal no-gi competitor. I'm just saying that designing your own belt system for no-gi doesn't seem to be necessary. And if you are phenomenal, if you're a black belt level no-gi, but you don't know shit in the gi, you're not a black belt. I'm sorry. And that doesn't mean you're not a phenomenal grappler, because I absolutely believe there are phenomenal grapplers who haven't spent a day in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym. But I'm just saying that, if you want to try to keep, for the sake of preserving, quote-unquote, our art and preserving what we are, to earn a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or I don't even call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu anymore, just Jiu-Jitsu, you have to understand how the gi works and how all that stuff works. And it would be, obviously, I think you should also be able to cross over and do very well no-gi. But that doesn't mean that the no-gi guys are black belts because they do good no-gi. If you're a no-gi guy that's always done no-gi and you suck in the gi, or you're just tough in the gi because you're a good grappler, but you don't know, if you can't do basic chokes and basic escapes and basic things, you're not a black belt. You're just not. Yeah, your level is up there and you're going to kick the shit out of everybody else that's not at that level, but you're not a black belt. And that's fine. That's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, why do we feel the need to put a black belt on it so we feel better about losing to them or about...
No, I don't think that I would feel better about losing to a guy that is a black belt. I don't really care. I think for the person that is a specifically no-gi, they want the validation. You know, they want people to know, like, when they walk into a gym, like, oh, this dude's legit. Because it's like the Naga, right? They just have beginner, intermediate, and advanced.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They try to base it off your belt.
Let me clarify. I'm not going to lose either. I was just talking about other people's opinion.
Yeah, Jason's not going to lose to some white belt no-gi guy. That's basically what he's trying to say.
That was bothering me.
But what I'm trying to say, though, is that I don't think it's validation for the person that trains jiu-jitsu. I think it's for the no-gi person.
The thing is, too, though, but what about wrestling? When you show up to when kids in high school go to a wrestling coach, when kids in college go to a wrestling coach, when adults, not kids, go, train with Olympic level coaches, do they say, I'm a black belt in wrestling? No, they're an Olympic coach, or they're a college coach, and they're a high school coach. And obviously, we don't have those channels for no-gi jiu-jitsu to say, I'm your high school no-gi jiu-jitsu coach.
And that's the thing, though.
But they can find other ways to...
Should it be called jiu-jitsu, though? But hold on, should it be called jiu-jitsu then? Should it just be called grappling? I mean, should it be 10th Planet grappling?
He could, but he didn't because he trained in the gi. So that's a whole different argument you're getting into there.
But he teaches a no-gi system.
Okay.
So, I mean, like...
But he cannot remove the fact that everything...
But he still wears pants. He
right.
Yes. Which is weird.
And
I actually like that.
This is another argument as far as Eddie trained in the gi extensively. And so I feel like he is doing the right thing by calling it jiu-jitsu because he learned jiu-jitsu. Right. And I'm not saying you can't learn jiu-jitsu because I do think, I've trained at Huron and Henderson a few times. And if you go down there, it's interesting because their classes, they have half of the class wearing no-gi, half of the class wearing gi, half the guys wearing gi pants and a rash guard. They kind of just let guys wear whatever because their stance on it is it should work in all modalities, all levels. And so I kind of get that and I appreciate that and I understand that. And so I would call what they're doing jiu-jitsu, but it still comes from and originates from the gi. Can you learn jiu-jitsu without the gi? Yes. Are there things that are purely jiu-jitsu without the gi? Yes. Are there things that are not jiu-jitsu that come in the gi? Yes. Are there things that are not jiu-jitsu that come in no gi? Yes. So I think it's just a matter of where you came from.
I think that, because wrestling, like you said, has like that, I wrestled in college. I wrestled at a D1 college. There isn't that for no-gi grappling. There isn't that. So what they try to equate it is like, what level am I at compared to the gi? Like people are like, oh, I'm a purple belt with no gi. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I used to hate hearing that because I know I trained with those guys and I was like, no, you're not. You suck.
Yeah, no, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I've heard that so many times. Like, oh, I'm about a purple belt with no gi. Like, I don't even know what that means, but like, at some point,
that's like I've only had 2 beers, officer.
Yeah, but like seriously, like, it's a way to feed the ego, which.
Well, I just think that basically like that sets you up to fail, gets you to fail a little bit later. You know what I'm saying? Like if whenever I would go in like in high school and like say I was a sophomore or junior and I was actually wrestling varsity, well then I would go against a senior that was wrestling varsity. So obviously he's been wrestling varsity for a little bit longer. Okay, we're just going wrestling right now. Okay, just throwing this out there. And then in my head, I'm thinking, oh crap, he's actually wrestled varsity and he's a senior. So that probably means he's been wrestling varsity for a while, as is the other guys looking at me saying, you know what, this guy's a sophomore, he's a freshman, and he's wrestling varsity.
He doesn't know anything.
He doesn't know. Yeah, he doesn't know anything. So he's already got this ego pumped up. He's going to whip the crap out of him. Well, the other guy's thinking he's going to get whipped. And then when it actually gets flipped on him, then, I mean, think about egos just getting crushed, just getting smashed. Same thing with brown belt, black belt, all of that, you know, and it's like, you know, I've gone into tournaments where I just got my blue belt and this guy's like, man, I've been a blue belt for 2.5 years and I don't want to tell him I just got my blue belt, and then I end up beating him, you know, and it's like, well, what would that do to his ego?
Well, but you can't divorce the fact that you wrestled from your.
Well, that's true too. But then I've also went to other tournaments, and the guys are like, "Yo, what's up with your grappling? What college did you wrestle for?" And it's like, I didn't wrestle in college. I just had some freestyle. You know, I just had some high school wrestling. But they're asking what college. So other people. That just tells you that other people are actually saying, "Hey, I wrestled in college. You must fear me." You know,
that's more to an attestament. That's an testament of like how Matt like values the belt system. You know what I mean? Like, he does not promote someone that will go and get worked by someone that's a lower belt. You know what I mean? Matt like will make you work and wait, and like, you know, it's almost like the class, everyone in the class is expecting it when it happens, you know?
Yeah.
And
but I don't like saying, "Hey, I'm this great person." You know, I don't, and not only that, but I don't value anybody that actually. So what I'm saying is like, if you say, "Hey, I'm a black belt," or "I'm a brown belt," and whatever, you know, say like in no-gi grappling or whatever. Okay, well, I mean, until it's actually put down in the works, you know, it's like, okay, well, you know, how did he roll? Well, he rolled like a brown or a black belt. But in the fact when he actually announced he's a brown or a black belt, and then you roll against him and you mop the floor with him.
yeah, I mean, and I think that's happened to probably everyone here, like where you've rolled with someone where either they were a lower belt and you felt like they were probably better than the belt that they were at, or they were a higher belt and you were like, man, that wasn't as tough as I thought it was going to be, you know? And I think that's like, that shows the inconsistency among gyms, you know? But, you know, I'm really proud. When I started training at Matt's, at Bakersfield Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the highest one was a purple belt besides Matt, you know? So my whole goal, I remember rolling with the purple belts and they would just tear me up, you know? Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, I'm like, man, I just want to be a purple belt someday, you know? I just want to be a purple belt, like, because that's like, that's legit at our gym, you know? Like, Freddie was a purple belt. Brandon was a blue belt when I started, you know what I mean? Like, all of these, like, super sick, Chad was a purple belt. There was only a few purple belts in our gym. Dale was a purple belt. There was a lot of for me, purple belt was like, you're legit, you know? And that was a big goal of mine. Now that I'm purple belt, like, I'm like, all right, like, I'm happy. I'm happy because like that was like the level that when I first started, that means you're legit.
So do you feel like that belt is actually like a certificate to you?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I'm happy to when I put on my purple belt, I'm happy about it. Because like I feel like I put in so much work to get it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I feel like I said, you know, I trained for a long time without a gi, and I trained for a long time with other people that, you know, weren't as legit. When you train at a real jiu-jitsu school for the first time, you'll know it because you're like, damn, this guy is legit, you know? This purple belt, this black belt is like, he has control of me, and I've never been in a situation like that, you know? So for me, yeah, like my purple belt, it's a reflection of like the hard work, and I'm proud when I tie it around my waist. And I think, you know, everyone would probably say that.
You should be. You earned it, you know? Yeah. I actually had moments as a white belt where I thought I was proud to put on my white belt.
What about you, Jason? When you earned your black belt, what, about a year ago?
Yeah, a little more than a year ago now.
And so you earned your black belt, and how did that, I mean, isn't that a huge, I can't even imagine like the amount of accomplishment that it feels, but then at the same time, I'm sure it's like, oh shit, I'm a black belt now.
Definitely. It was surreal. It was kind of like, whoa, Like, this just happened, but at the same time, it was like, I don't feel that different. You know, I don't feel taller. I don't feel like I got more muscles. I don't feel like
Special powers.
Right.
Did you feel like you arrived in a certain
No.
level, or just
No.
or did you
I-
feel like you
let's
just
keep
begun?
rolling, right?
Actually, quite the opposite, sir.
Like
Quite
you
the
began.
opposite. It was like, seriously. I'll tell you this. All this, it's interesting because, you know, the belts are important, I think, for people to understand they're progressing and for people to understand where they stand and for people to, you know, have a progression through the levels and the learning that occurs in jiu-jitsu. But the interesting thing about black belt is that once you get your black belt, it's like the progression is different because there's no more of this the next belt. This is the belt I will be until I'm 50 years old, like, or older probably. Like, so it's odd because there isn't like, there are guys who have been black belts longer than I've been training that I could potentially, you know, go against in certain tournaments, or just train with when I stop by and train with them. And that's interesting because that means that they have had that amount of time to continue to develop after being a black belt since I've been training, literally. And the talent pool is a deep sea. I'll say that. It's because at all the other belt levels, typically, when you get to a certain point and you're beating enough people that are higher belts than you and winning enough tournaments and doing well enough, they just promote you. And so you no longer have to deal with those people. You just deal with the next step. And then at black belt, there is no more of that. It's just you're always going to deal with those people, and there's all those people that are in the same talent pool that have been there for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years, whatever. And the sense of quote unquote I've arrived, if you get it, it fades real fast if you either compete or train with other really good black belts. And the other thing I can say too is it's no longer that dude's a good purple belt, that dude's a good brown belt. It's just
You're a black belt.
that's it. There's no more like you're good at this, you're good at that. It's just you're a black belt.
You're not a good black belt. You're just a black
you're a
belt.
black belt.
You're a
Yeah.
black belt. You're an expert. You know, that's expected. Jeremy, I know like you were kind of, we've discussed this before, but like how did it feel through your promotion process? Jeremy, how long you been training, Jeremy? Like 5 years?
Yeah, November will be 5 years.
So Jeremy, I will talk about it a little bit. Jeremy's like, he wrestled before, but he went through and he at every belt level, he competed a lot and he won a lot. And that was like, that's it's a progression and it's a justified way to get your promotion steps a lot faster, you know? So Jeremy for sure earned the belt that he wears. And at every belt, he would always tell me like, "Oh man, I didn't want this. You know, I didn't want this belt because he felt like I don't know if he felt like he had more to learn or he wanted to become better at that and mature a little bit as a jiu-jitsu player." But can you talk a little bit about that, Jeremy?
Well, the way that I actually think of grappling and jiu-jitsu and wrestling, for that matter, it's like a trade. Okay, you're never going to stop progressing. It's basically the day you stop learning is the day you're going to die. So the way I think about it is there's always so much more to learn. So whether I'm running the table at a tournament, whether, you know, that just means that there was one guy out there that didn't show up to that tournament. It doesn't mean that I couldn't have lost that day. It's just that I was the best in my bracket that day. Okay. So I know that everybody, cause I've lost enough to know that there's always enough to, there's always somebody that's going to be out there to beat you. So with that in mind, you got to think, okay, this guy's a good white belt, but white belts can beat blue belts and blue belts can beat purple belts. And, you know, it doesn't really matter at that point. So whenever I got my blue belt, I didn't really want my blue belt because I knew that I could learn so much more, and you're just trying to, you know, just soak it up, just sponge it up as much as possible. When I got my purple belt, didn't want my purple belt. I just wanted to soak up as much more knowledge and just get as good as I could. But I know that just, you know, promotions happen whether you like it or not. So you know, and now that I'm at my brown belt, it's the same thing. It's like, you know, I was at purple belt like almost 2.5 years, and you know, and I savored it. I really did. I really enjoyed staying at a certain belt for so long. And you know, granted, I did win a bunch of medals at that tournament or at that belt, but you know, so I could just see it as black belt too. It's like, hey, okay, now you've arrived. technically, quote unquote, you've arrived. You are now a black belt. Now what? Just like Jason said, it's like you're just a black belt. So now you've got guys. The talent pool just got that much bigger.
Yep, I agree with that. And I want to talk about Frank a little bit because Frank is a person that didn't compete as much, right? But had been training. When I first started training with Matt about, like 6.5 years ago, Frank was a blue belt. And I believe he had just got his blue belt like a few months before I started training. Talk to me about that, Frank. Talk to me about just the non-competitive side of jiu-jitsu and being able to grow at each belt level. You know, Frank was at each belt level for a while. You know, and I think when he got his belt at each level, it was. No one was like, oh, why is he getting that? You know what I mean? So in our gym, I would say overall, like when people get promoted, it's kind of that feeling. People are super stoked and not surprised. So can you talk to us about that, Frank?
Yeah, I look at it like a time invested type of thing for me. Since, like you said, I don't do a lot of tournaments. My blue belt, I really wasn't expecting. It was kind of a surprise. Made me happy. I was very happy to make that. Even that one little leap, man, it puts a lot of like goodness in you, like just getting that one little belt. Then just wanted to keep on training, keep on learning. Like Jeremy was saying, it was all about learning and keep on going and try. I think I measured myself. I don't know if it's wrong. Maybe it's, I don't know. I always measure myself to how I did against people that were competing, and I would like try maybe a little bit just to give those guys hard times. I don't know. You guys think? You think that's bad?
I don't think so. I think whether you compete or not, the people that do compete, they need all your training partners, you know, and they need to get pushed in the gym. Like I know Jason is getting ready for Nogi Worlds, and I'm gonna go as if I was going 100% against him as long as I don't fatigue, you know. So, and when Jeremy competes, I do the same thing for him. Jeremy hasn't competed in a while.
Thanks.
But
Maybe you should do the Nogi Worlds.
But I think he will, and when he does, you'll see him pick it up, and he won't want you to not roll hard with him, you know what I mean, or not train hard with him. So, Steve, have you competed yet?
No, I haven't.
So
I've done a couple mock tournaments in the gym, but nothing like what you guys do, where you go sit before thousands of people.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's different rolling in the gym compared to competing, for sure.
Yeah, I buy that.
And I think when you do it for the first time, I think everyone should compete. I'm not a big competitor, you know, and I've talked about that before. Like, I'm not real big on competing. I've competed at every belt that I've had except for purple belt, but I will compete at purple belt. And it's just a different aspect of the game. Some people say you learn a lot in competing. For me, I don't know that I learned so much. It's just that maybe you see what works, you know what I mean? Which is that is learning, but like you in training, you know, everyone knows what you're doing, and you know what everyone's doing, you know. In your gym, like you build a habit, and you build that habit with people, and you're like, okay, I know what this person's doing, I know what he's going for, so it's easy to shut down. That's what's cool about tournaments, is that it's unknown, and it's like an uncharted territory, you know.
Just to kind of jump off of what Carl was talking about, I do recall there were losses in my past where the whole you learn more from a loss than a victory thing, in my head I was like, this is fucking bullshit. I fucking just lost, and this is stupid, and I don't want to be here right now. And obviously that's a bad attitude to have. And I will say that on the one hand, unfortunately, I had losses since then, and obviously I'm saying unfortunately because I lost, but at the same time, it's something that I've come to realize that once you decide that I'm not going to just give up because I lost, you start to look at the loss and you start to understand things about the loss. You start to understand things about yourself as a person, and also understand things about yourself as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and things that you do wrong or things that you do right. or the good days, the bad days, and where to go from there. It kind of, for me lately, you know, I competed a lot of the lower belts, and then I didn't for years. And then I've started to compete again at the higher belts. It's definitely different. But at the same time, I will say this about my recent competitions. It's given me a bit of a compass and a bit of something to, you know, this is my starting point. This is where I hope to be, and that will hopefully be my end point until that next tournament. And then after that tournament, then I'll pick a new direction or and obviously the direction is always improving or always bettering myself and my teammates. But I will say that it just takes a little bit of patience and humility to get past the sting of losing and to start to pick it apart and to start to actually look at yourself and analyze things. And it's humbling because it's easier just to be like, fuck this.
Yeah.
And be pissed. Because trust me, I did that many times. And that's a big reason why I stopped competing after some of the lower belts. And I regret that, but I can't change it now. But the point is that at the upper belts, I feel like I'm kind of paying my dues to get where I think I should be for that time where I didn't compete, you know, and that lack of experience that I didn't gain as a competitor. And I'm not saying everyone that does jiu-jitsu has to compete, but I will say that there is definitely some benefits as far as improving your jiu-jitsu and improving yourself if you look at it the right way.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there are some people that training is enough, you know. I consider myself one of those people, you know. Like, I will train for a long period of time with nothing. There's no goal for me. There's no, like, I'm going to compete at this date. I just like to train, you know. And I've been doing it for so long that I will always train. There will never be a period of my life where I consider myself where I'm not training jiu-jitsu. But to
It's so
Jason's
fun.
point, like, some people, yeah, and
It's so fun.
it's just so fun to train.
It's the best
Jeremy
secret.
tells me, like, he's almost the opposite. He likes to have, like, a goal and something to set and something to achieve, somewhere to go, you know. And I think that's what Jason was talking about as far as the compass. It's like now he has a guide of, like, okay, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Been a lot of good discussion. We've talked about a lot of different topics. Definitely look us up on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. We'll be interactive. Anyone that's commented so far on our Facebook page, we try to get back right away and have that discussion. It's been super fun. Thank you guys for listening.
Definitely follow us on Periscope. Make it happen this week, people.
Periscope, that is the new thing. Steven is pushing that. We'll start streaming our podcast live so you guys can actually provide us live questions. So you guys have a great weekend. Don't forget to check out the fights tomorrow night. We are definitely going to recap those next week. So you guys all have a good night.
Peace.
Later.
And I will see you soon. I'll be in Germany and Czech Republic next week. But when I get back, we'll talk.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll talk later.